Welcome back. All right. So now we're going to focus on chapter 14. And this chapter is a pretty easy one to understand. And I think something that you're going to be able to relate to pretty easily. And in chapter 14, we're going to be focusing on a corporate culture. So we focused earlier on chapters of cultural and cultural diversity and cultural management or diversity management, bringing different people of different cultures within our team and enriching our teams and bringing that there. And now we're going to talk about the culture that's actually formed within the organization. So each and every organization has a unique culture, a feeling about them. When you walk into the place, sometimes you can just get a feeling about certain organizations. You might get a feeling for an organization immediately and say, oh, I really want to be a part of this. Or immediately, this is not the place for me. This is not someplace I feel comfortable in. So even the same industries, whether they be manufacturing industries, whether they be civil service, whether they be retail, within those organizations, they may have a very different feel. Some have been well noted, and we hear about them a lot, like Google and corporate cultures like that. Other cultures a little more subdued, but even within that, you can still see a clear difference sometimes. If you go to a store like Publix or a store like Lowe's, who really, really pride themselves in really good customer service, and it's brought up from the very beginning, the expectations there. So people who don't value that, who don't like those things, are probably not going to be attracted to a job in a place like that. And those that do feel like that, and they will embrace it. And if they don't embrace it, they're going to be shunned by the others and pushed into a role so they can do that. Other organizations that we hear about, like Walmart, you don't always see that friendly customer service orientation. Doesn't mean there's nobody good in there or nobody friendly in there, but that you don't get that general friendly feeling from walking in the door, where again, at Lowe's or Publix, you won't struggle for very long at all before somebody's there offering to help you. In most instances, there's always unique stores and things like that. So that's what we're going to focus on in this chapter. An organizational culture, according to your book, is a set of key values, assumptions, understanding, and norms that is shared by the members of the organization and taught to the new members as correct. So the organization really embraces these things, and then as it adds new members, they become a part of that same culture. So they learn from others, from the modeling, from the archives, the things that are set with around. That's how they're going to learn what that role is, what their job is, and how they should behave. And I know these books don't translate real well, but I'm going to show you anyhow. On page 429, you're going to see of the text, you're going to see an iceberg, and it kind of relates it pretty well. Let's see if you can see it here. If you can see the iceberg there. But basically shows about what we see above the water and what we see below the water. And that's a good analogy for culture. And it talks about the visible things. Those are the things that we see. When we walk into a culture, we see these things, and that's how we understand them. And those can include things like artifacts. Artifacts are going to be symbols. They're going to be pins or pendants or outfits that we wear, or fobs that we wear, or hats, or dress code, those kind of things. The way an office, uniforms, certainly. The way an office is laid out. Is it open door? Is it closed off? Does it look friendly? Is it got a cozy feel to it? Does it have a very cold feel to it? And also things like slogans, names, things that are attached to them. Is it the friendly place to be, or does it have a different kind of a saying or slogan that's attached to it, as well as ceremonies or things that they might do, cheering, high-fiving, compliments, awards, those kind of things that we can see easily as a consumer or as just a different individual walking in. But invisible, things that we don't always see that are going to be hidden would be the innuendo, the things that are deeper. They're shared amongst organization members, but not always shared with other people. That's just our way. That's how we do it. That's the military way. That's the Kroger way. That's just how it's done. Also, it's going to have things of assumptions that will come with it, such as when you come here, you need to be trustworthy, or there's this expectation of a certain type of behavior from people. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, or of a friendliness, or that there's things they're not told to the employee, but they're expected, and it's expected they come in line with them, and they learn that we come on time, that we treat others in a certain way. And so you'll be kind of corralled into that behavior, and the person will either come on board with it or they will feel uncomfortable and ultimately either end up leaving or having conflict within the workplace. So people don't always say this is how you're supposed to behave. It's just understood. And teachers, we look at a teacher, we have an expectation that a teacher is going to be friendly and good with kids and speak softly. And when they don't, when they violate that expectation, we're uncomfortable with that relationship because we feel like that's not the way we would have an expectation of that person. So that happens in every industry. Some industries more so than others. Some things are hard to define, like as well. Let's see here. Why is culture important? And it is very important in an industry. And one of the things is called is the internal integration, and that's basically how we behave and how we expect to behave. And those behaviors are there for a reason. There's a reason that corporations and companies have certain expectations. They make it work within those components. And so, if people are astray from that, then it won't work the way it's supposed to. And the other thing that we need to know about culture is the external adaptation. And that basically is, how does that culture, that organization, then work with other organizations that are different from us, that have different expectations, that have different rules, that have different ideals. Some company may be 9 to 5, another company 24/7. How do we work within those components that are different? One company may expect you to wear a suit and tie, another company is a casual dress. So how do we work within those components while the rules and the expectations are different? One term I like a lot is called cultural strength, and that's the degree of agreement amongst the employees about the importance of specific values and the way things are done. So the strength of the culture, there are certain things that are very, very strong within certain organizations, and you feel them. They radiate from the organization because the organization and its members really value those things. They probably write about them in their mission and vision statements. It may be slogans that they carry with them, and it's walking the walk and talking the talk. There are things that they do and ways that they carry themselves, and they pride themselves in it. So the cultural strength comes from everybody embracing those same values and ensuring that not only are they adhered to within the organization, but that other people know it and understand it. A cultural gap, however, would be the opposite, and that's when there's a difference between the desired behavior and what's actually happening. So it's when an organization is challenged with saying, we pride ourselves in being the best at this or doing that. However, that's not what's happening here. So how do we bridge that gap and get back to where we need to be? And that's really important to understand. An adaptive culture is one that facilitates high performance by incorporating several different values. One of those is emphasizing the whole and not the parts, and keeping the boundaries between the parts minimized. So when you have a culture of a certain thing, they don't really highlight mistakes or accidents or fallbacks or things like that. It's more of the momentum of us moving in a certain direction. So if you have a culture of respect and you had a bad day, that's uncomfortable, but it doesn't change the momentum of what's going on. If people are good teachers and a student isn't performing well, that doesn't stop the momentum of what's going forward. So it's having that common culture of moving forward and focusing on the total picture, not on any individual day, person, or incident. It also is a culture that has equality and trust as primary values. They have to trust that all of the people are embracing those same values and moving in that direction, even when they're not seen. It's not micromanaged, everybody embraces it, and that's why it's successful. And finally, the culture that encourages risk-taking and changes for improvement, because they have that strength within them, so they know that they can trust each other in moving towards those goals. The good cultural leader is able to articulate the vision for the whole organization and make it one that all the employees can believe in. And so they make it real, they make it manageable, and they're very charismatic and able to verbalize those goals in a good way. They head up the day-to-day activities, and they ensure that the culture is part of the day-to-day activities. So whether, again, that's slogans, whether it's the way they behave, if we are a culture of safety, then the workplace needs to be safety. They're going to have rituals and ceremonies and things that celebrate safety. So the leader will ensure that the behavior of that organization is in line with the goals of that organization, so that we don't say we're one thing and not do that same thing. So if we're going to do it, and we're going to be good at it, then we have to be it as well. They basically walk the walk. Culture is reinforced through several different things within the workplace. It can be reinforced through things like ceremonies. Those can be celebration things, or they can be less formal, such as if we are friendly, then you might expect that that organization would know everybody's names, or that they would have birthday cakes for people's birthday, or put a sign up for somebody's birthday, or something like that. So they're going to have celebrations. They're going to note and give credit to people who've done well, if that's something that they embrace. So whatever ceremony that organization takes place is a way in which they spread that culture and they share that culture. And it could be something like, an organization supplies pizzas on Fridays, which would be informal. It could be something more formal, like Employee of the Month as well. It could be stories. These things are, again, informal, and these are usually spread amongst employees with themselves, employees sharing with other employees. Oh my goodness, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And what do they take on? I know even myself, I just had this conversation with my mother just last week when we were talking about an organization where there was a lot of drama and a lot of backstabbing. I was talking about a particular organization I was familiar with where people were readily talking about each other behind their back. And she said to me, every organization does that. And I think to some degree that's probably true. But working in social work on an intimate team of only 11 that have worked together for many years, when we have turnover, it's usually one person maybe a year or every 2 or 3 years. So they're really embraced in that culture when that happens. We're not having that rapid turnover where it's harder to take that a culture. And I told her, on my team, it's not there. It isn't. Nobody speaks ill of another. If they don't have anything nice to say, they simply don't say it. And if I brought somebody in who did violate that, it would not be tolerated. So meaning that they are so heavily involved in that culture that they would redirect it, and they would say, not only would they ignore it, but they would probably step up from ignoring it and say, I don't appreciate that. So many organizations have that really strong culture, and they're able to sustain that. Organizations with a high turnover, like retail, things like that, will have a harder time with that. Any team that's transitioning or changing will have a harder time with that. Symbols, again, these are badges, cards, Employee of the Month, parking spaces, anything that would be showing who somebody is, that we can see at a glance. That's who they are, what is their rank, or what is their role. It can also be through things like specialized slogans or lingo, words, acronyms, things that only people within that unit would understand. Sometimes those are meant to intentionally keep others out, and sometimes they just become so commonplace you assume that everybody knows what that is. I know a recent employee that I had, my most recent hire, she was frustrated. She was stuck in a situation. It was a situation that needed to be escalated. I didn't intentionally keep her out. I just was distracted and didn't think about it. And I said, listen to her attentively. And then I said, that's fine. I'll take it up with the ADO. And then she came back and she's like, that's great. Thanks for your help. Can you tell me what an ADO is? ADO, to me, I'm thinking everybody knows what an ADO is, which is an assistant director of operations. So it would have been a higher level, a level she wouldn't normally approach on her own. And I just kind of in my head thought she knew what it was. So that was inadvertent. When dealing with the public, we might be throwing away terms and throwing things out there that we assume that they know, or sometimes we intentionally throw things out there that we know that they don't know, and it's a way to keep our own culture internally. It also can be through selection and socialization. This could be cliques, clans, people who have lunch together, people who spend time together, people who are in email chains and phone chains and supporting each other. That can be a way that culture is projected. And finally, through our daily actions, the things that we do every day to embrace and support others or to keep others out. Finally, within a culture, sometimes we find other subcultures. Those subcultures can be found within an organization or within a team of an organization. So you may find an large organization like your sheriff's office that we have one of a culture of trust and integrity and respect. But certain units you may find are well known for certain things, being particularly hardworking, being particularly emotional, being particularly tough, being particularly bright, being particularly computer nerds, or any kind of culture that may happen within certain units or certain departments that people would gravitate or where you would just expect that. Usually it's not done in harm either. Within my own organization, there are some that are more technically savvy, and they refer to themselves self-contained within a group of that are okay with this. So you can't just throw it out there and assume everybody's okay with it. But within that culture, I have a group and we call them nerds. And so when something goes wrong, I'm like, I need a nerd, I need a nerd. And oh, I'm coming, I'm a nerd, I'm going to help you. Within the foster parents, we have parents that we call smother mothers. And these are the mothers that are just so rich with love and hugs and, and cuddles and all those kind of things. And other mothers would have a different talent. So we would use those terms within those components, not out of harm. Those that haven't would own that. They take that role on themselves. It can also be subtypes such as an achievement culture. Everybody on that team works really hard. Everybody in that team works for an advancement. Other teams may not do that. Cliques or clans are also well known within those compartments, and also bureaucratic cultures that it has to be very systematic and a lot of red tape and how things are handled and how things are done. It's not done person to person. It's all part of the system. And finally, values. Value-based leadership is really important. It's having the right person in the role who has strong values, and those must be admired by the organization and embraced by the organization. It's a relationship between the leaders and the followers that's based strongly on that internalized values that the leader has. You'll see this in religious organizations, but you'll see it in a lot of other organizations as well. People want to work for that leader because of who they are, and they feel safe in that, and they know all the time they're going to be protected, and that their organization, their culture, and everything is moving in that same direction. And so they really enjoy that team, that organization, that place. When we talked about the Container Store, people really like to work there. Google, people really like to work there. They like to be part of that culture, and they really respect those leaders that are within it. And they will not, when leadership roles turn over, people won't emerge as a leader in those organizations unless they also embrace those. So when they have those values, they're often based on the personal ethics of the person. They truly believe those things. It's not just part of the organization, but part of who they are, and that's why they're able to project it. And in many cases, it's also a spiritual calling towards that direction. And that's, again, why you often will see it in spiritual organizations. But a calling, a passion that comes from inside to fulfill something like that. All right, that's chapter 14. One more to go.